Welcome to Drill Down Earnings. We have the latest quarterly results from Western Digital, an important maker of disk drives. This is the business story behind one stock on a move. I'm Cory Johnson, Chief Market Strategist for the Futurum Group. Western Digital is really interesting because they're both in flash and hard drives and really kind of state of the art for what's happening historically in PCs and in the enterprise, both of which, of course, are going through some big changes right now. So it's a good time for a look at second quarter earnings. Of course, Wall Street's just going to look at a beat or a miss and walk on. This is a beat and hit the stocks down a little bit. So we're going to talk about why that's happening. First of all, fourth quarter revenue, $3.76 billion. That's up substantially, 21% from last year. And within that, their earnings also doing great after losing a ton of money last year. So a really big turnaround for this business that was doing $2.7 billion in revenues a year ago, now at $3.5 billion, or I'm sorry, $3.8 billion in revenues. So a really big turnaround for this business. And margins improving fantastically, up from 4% to 38%. Who wouldn't like that? But operating expenses swelling. I think they had a lot of bonuses, it sounds like, that were geared towards a turnaround in profitability. They got the turnaround in profitability, so they had a boost in their expenses as well. And maybe that was a little bit disappointing. But we look a little bit deeper beyond the headlines. What we see is that AI data cycles are helping drive their business across their industry, and it's happening on the data side, on the enterprise side. It's not really showing up. It's happening in the cloud, it's happening in the client, but it's not showing up in consumer. So I think that maybe was another disappointment here. But $1.9 billion in revenues in their cloud business, very good. $1.2 billion in revenues in their client business, fantastic. Their consumer business, as I mentioned, declining by about 7% on a quarter-over-quarter basis, although up on a year-over-year basis. And specifically, the thing that was really good in this business, so you break apart their business units, flash revenue up 40% gross margins, and the business also increasing substantially on a year-over-year basis, as well as the hard drive business. And you'll note that they compare these things on a quarter-over-quarter basis and a sequential basis, because this isn't so much about seasonality as it really is about a turn in the market. I think, however, there was some disappointment about the guidance. The guidance for next quarter, while substantially above where they were a year ago, is still a little bit less than what Wall Street was expecting. So while things are getting a lot better for Western Digital, they're not getting as much better as Wall Street might have expected. So as a result, the stock was down 5% in after-hours trading. And yet, the stock's up 58% in a year. So, what do you got to complain about? That's a fantastic result. Now, on the conference call, there was a question put to the CEO David Goeckeler about what's really happening in the PC market, and are we going to see a turnaround in personal computers? There was a great expectation we might see a boom in PC sales with some new exciting chips from the likes of Qualcomm and others going into the PC business in the fall. It sounds to my ear like that's not materializing. What do you think?
We continue to see strong demand in enterprise SSD. We see the PC market really kind of maybe a little bit of an inventory rebalancing here going on in the next quarter, but we see that improving as we go throughout the year. I think that's a normal process given a couple of really strong quarters here in the first part of the recovery of NAND pricing. So we still see demand outstripping supply through the second half of the year, and quite frankly, our modeling shows throughout next calendar year as well.
So they're selling what they can, but it doesn't sound like a big boom in PCs, at least in 2024, but perhaps in next year. But what's the one number that means a whole lot, the one number you want to take away from these results to remember what mattered for Western Digital in the quarter? I'm going to have the drill down earnings takeaway right after this.
The Drill Down is brought to you by Futurum Group, where analysts, researchers, advisors, content creators, and marketing experts help business leaders anticipate and understand shifts in their industries and build strategies to leverage disruptive innovation. With deep analysis, Futurum Group's extensive industry experience delivers reliable research and data, thought leadership, and actionable advice to help you with your strategy and go-to-market efforts. Futurum Group.
So Western Digital's second quarter earnings just reported. The conference call is going on at this very moment, but I listened to most of it, and here's your essential summary. Look, the revenues are fantastic, $3.76 billion, up substantially, 21% from the previous year. Expenses were also up, and so the earnings results were really good. but maybe not as good as they had been if expenses have stayed flat. Nonetheless, the bite, the one number that tells us a whole lot, revenue guidance for the next quarter of $4.1 billion at the midpoint. I think that's the number to keep in mind here. So much better than even the quarter they just did at 3.8. At 4.1 billion, that's so much more profitable, or so much larger as well as more profitable, but maybe not as much as Wall Street was hoping for. Thanks for listening to Drill Down Earnings. I'm Cory Johnson. And you can check me on X at Cory TV, on TikTok and Instagram at Drill Down Pod, and on YouTube, 6.5 Media channel. Drill Down Earnings, part of 6.5 Media.